Welcome to the ExperienceMore tour. My name is Marshall. This is a place where we dive deep into gear, explore it from all angles to give the perspective on really stuff that you can't Google, things that you couldn't find out online. And to do that, we often bring in product experts. And today we absolutely brought in a product expert with adidas TERREX. We have with us Thomas Groh, who is a product manager at adidas TERREX, based in Germany. Tom, welcome to the ExperienceMore tour. Psyched to see you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here as well.
And Tom, before we dive in, I'd just love to have you introduce kind of what your title is at adidas TERREX. Do we say adidas TERREX? Do we say TERREX? What's the right way to talk about this?
First of all, it's adidas TERREX.
Yes, it is.
But I am familiar with Adidas, so it's fine. Just joking. Yeah, it's adidas TERREX. So we basically the outdoor branch of the big brand Adidas. My title is Senior Product Manager for TERREX Footwear, Hike, Seasonals, and Kids. So basically everything in TERREX Footwear that is not trail running. That's my colleague Groh, which you also had interviewed last year on some of the stuff.
So you're looking at hike, you're looking at kids, again, like you said, anything not trail running. So we have a new product today. We're going to explore the Sky Chaser, which I know you've been working on to bring to life, and you've been out supporting it actually in the market now that it's out there. So it'll be really fun to hear some of what you're hearing in the market on this. But let's dive in a little bit deeper kind of into what your role, right? What does it mean to be a product manager at TERREX?
Yeah, so we own the range. So we basically brief the design and development team, which we call the cross-functional triad. We tell them, hey, we see a gap in the range, or we see a model of ours not performing so well anymore, and we want to refresh it, bring in a new modern technology, or like just the next iteration. So we do our research, we talk to retailers, we talk to our market counterparts, we look online reviews, and then we create a brief, which is basically feature set, price point, our internal margin KPIs, and then a lot about the scenario, the use case, and how we want to position the product. And then we brief it, hand it over to our design and development team, but we don't just throw it over the fence. We then work together as a cross-functional team afterwards as well. So they listen to design input, they also do some research themselves on consumers. So we stay as a team, but the ownership basically moves from us after the brief to the design and development team. And then we go on a journey together, going through milestone calendars, and then ultimately factory trips, sample reviews. And then also my role is to go out to the market, to connect with retailers, to connect with consumers as well. Testing is part of it as well, which I'm not owning, but I'm also joining because I want to hear firsthand how the product performs. And then we make our choices going through the milestones and the prototyping, and ultimately bring it to market. And then obviously also reconnect again, seeing how well it performs, how's the sell-through, initial feedback and whatnot. So it's super interesting. This basically a 2-year cycle.
It's a fascinating cycle, right? Because it goes from this conceptualization to briefing, and then you go into this shepherding phase, right, where you're kind of along with it and making sure that it gets looked after almost. And
Totally.
somebody has to pay attention to all that, right? And it's pretty cool all the way through to sell through, like even why you're here today, right, to help support this shoe as it enters into the market.
Exactly.
How did you gain the skills? What's been your career path to get into something like this?
Yeah, so I've been with Adi for 9 years now. I've started it's a very different role. I've been with TERREX now for 5 years in the product marketing, footwear specifically. I was allowed to go this step by just being a geek on product myself. Like I've always been outdoorsy. Like I do mountain biking, trail running, hiking with my family. We always went to the mountains. We never went to the beaches with my parents. So I play ice hockey myself, which is also super like equipment heavy sport, like all the sticks and skates and everything. So I always wanted to know like, why is there several different price points? Like what am I getting for what kind of amount that I'm spending? So I think that's the interest. And now when I'm hiring, that's actually the one thing that I try to get out of the candidates, because that's the thing that I don't think you can learn necessarily. Like you can learn the processes and systems and everything, but you can't really love for the outdoors, or why it's cool to like be outside for like 10 hours and maybe not enjoy it at the time, but then enjoy it afterwards when you're done. It's like the person that hired me then just gave me the chance to show that you can learn everything else. And he saw that I do love the necessary things.
Yeah, you came with the
Um,
background, the love of the outdoors, and then the
totally.
curiosity around gear. Just and I, speaking for a lot of folk on this network, that's why they join. We're all really curious. We're kind of gear nerds, and we're yeah. Why is that? Shaped this way. Why is that, right? Because everything is designed, and it's great that you were able to take that curiosity and move it into a career. So, like, yeah, is this what you wanted to be when you grew up?
Uh, I, I, yes and no. I mean, I'm from the area, one of the few, like actually born in like 30 kilometers distance from here. So Adi has always been like this employer. I studied sports management. So obviously always eyeing this company, because I like being here. My parents are here and I have family here now. So it's always been a very attractive place to work. Um, how much I love it now, I it's great. It does
Right.
sometimes doesn't feel like a job, but it's not been something that I was eyeing on when I was 14 or whatever. But I wanted to work at Adi for sure.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, right. You grew up kind of in that area, knowing that this was a brand. A lot of your probably people you interacted with were interacting with Audi, and to be able to then
Totally,
come
yeah.
in and have this awesome job in the TERREX side of Audi is pretty cool. You know what? Audi's a large organization, and what do you think is sort of unique about working there? Like, what kind of resources do you think you have on hand that you may not, that other brands may not necessarily have access to because they don't have this like massive
Yeah.
company like Audi as the parent?
I think what's unique, first maybe personally, is this this is a window to the world. Like for me, coming from here, like there's people from every like someone in my team is half Nepalese, half French. Like in this area in Germany, this is probably the most diverse employer, and the campus is amazing. Like you walk around campus, it feels like unreal. Like there's sports facilities for everything. There's a football stadium, running,
Right.
climbing tower, tennis, a
Wow.
pool, gyms. There's bikes to get from A to B because it's so large. It's an absolute unreal place outside in the middle of nowhere, but it's where the founding like Adi Dassler and his brother, they are from this area, so it's really true to the history of the brand. So it's always nice to like get influence that I otherwise wouldn't be able to get when working in Germany, because it's not Shanghai, it's not a big city. It's a very small city in a fairly traditional space. So this is really a nice bubble of diversity. So that's very personal for me. And then when you talk about like tools or like additional support, like obviously it's a massive brand with a lot of innovation and R&D that's not product specific, but really like ingredient driven. And then we have,
Yeah.
the running BU that really pushes the envelope, and has all the facilities that you can think of. We have, all the virtual testing and chemistry. Like it's amazing what we can then translate to trail running first, because it's already a different use case, and then we can have a look at from a hiking perspective, because it's obviously an even more durable space and we need to be careful what ingredients we use. But I don't think another brand that's similarly sized to us has like to TERREX has this backbone of
Right.
innovation
Yeah,
and
I mean, you have at your disposal not only technologies that you could borrow from, but also you said the testing facilities and maybe even just bumping into somebody, right? And you can have a discussion and right and get inspiration and motivation.
it's also marketing wise, like we are now part of like bigger brand campaigns, which is
Yeah.
amazing. Otherwise we wouldn't be able to get that reach. So
It's very very cool. And yeah, and the Terex brand is something that is just I have massive respect for because it's really interesting to see these styles coming out, see the technology that comes out in them. But there's a look as well. There's a brand language there, right? And it's expressed, and you can kind of tell from a little bit away, not only because the triple stripes, but or whatever you call that. I don't know what you call it, but there's that. But also there's a look to the shoe. There's a brand language that I think we have kind of noticed, and maybe we can kind of put some words to that as we kind of continue through and we look to that design.
yeah, I think that's super important for us, and on going forward, you will see that even more, like even like bolder three stripes, because every other brand is probably would love to have like such an iconic branding possibility, and we don't want to be pushing TERREX too much as a separate brand. We really want to make sure people understand this is Adidas, this is
Hmm.
heritage. Like we were the ones who gave Reinhold Messner his first shoes.
Right.
There's such a strong history in the outdoor space, but also in general, like culturally. And this is such a sign off on quality. People, connect the 3 stripes with quality footwear, and this is just something you will see being pushed more even going forward. You already see on the Sky Chaser the stripes.
Yeah.
Bit bolder, and it's what we say, like when we brief, also it needs to be undeniably Adidas in colors, in also looking at what we've done in the past and making sure that's iconic for us.
Yeah, and I love how you've kind of integrated that into like, not only are they there, but it's actually technically functional
Totally.
in the TERREX,
Yeah.
right? To lock down the foot. And we'll get into that here as we get into some of these aspects of the products around the control, right? And things like that. Well, let's kind of zoom out at the whole TERREX line and then focus in on the Sky Chaser, right? So the TERREX line, right? We last year we were able to talk with Rowan and we talked about some of the trail running, right? And so we've kind of talked about that a little bit. But within hike, how do you consider like different users and different products that you have right now for folks? Where does the Sky Chaser fit into all that, I guess, is what we're trying to get to?
Yeah. Yeah, as you mentioned, we have trail running, and this obviously taken care of by Rowan. It's like driving our race team. You win podiums there, and then we have hiking. And in hiking, we basically have 2 big silos. One is like technical hiking, which is pinnacle product for this is our Sky Chaser. And then we have free hiking, where the Free Hiker, which is also a very disruptive product that we basically brought in 2019. And the USPs between the 2 shoes, I mean, both of them are hiking shoes, right? Let's not kid ourselves, right? But one of it is the Sky Chaser made for technical terrain, but we also now made sure that we take care of everyday comfort as well to make it our Swiss Army knife, which you see on the screen here. The key USP here is really protection and control, with comfort not being an afterthought. But you still have a capable, burly hiking shoe. On the Free Hiker, which is this shoe, the key USP here is really comfort, cushioning, and lightweight. So this is a much lighter build on the upper. It has a rocker construction. It has boost. It has a higher stack height. So it's really a very different way of hiking. This was created to walk on a PCT, for example, back in the time, where we know it's not overly technical. It's just long days. It's long days where you enjoy it being a bit lighter, where you like the roll, where you don't necessarily have like technical descents, where you would like to have a heel step, and where it's really about lightweightness. But then obviously when you're in technical terrain and rocky terrain, you want some more protective elements, and that's why we came in with the Sky Chaser now, really having molded toe cap and the cage and heel clip, and really a bit more of a chassis around the shoe to protect your foot. So that's
what's like a perfect trail for the Sky Chaser, right? You said the PCT maybe for the free hike, right? Distance, kind of maybe moving quickly, but it's a wide trail, right? It's a well-built trail. Like, what do you envision the difference being for the Sky Chaser? Where might you be headed? And if it's a trail in Europe, that's great. Just describe the trail to us, right?
Yeah, I mean, a key trail in Europe that some people relate to is the GR20. It's on Corsica. You have a bit more like rock contact. You have some sections that are a bit secure with like ropes or chains. Obviously, it's not a mountaineering shoe by no means, right? Like, it's not made for crampon readiness and whatnot, but it's definitely a shoe that can take a beating in rocky areas, in rutty areas, and also on loose gravel downhill, scree fields, that kind of stuff. So it's really a shoe that's made for alpine terrain with also non-maintained trails that are a bit off camber and way more like, walkiness to it. So it's definitely made for something more demanding from a technical scale. But
right, you don't want to slip off those rocks. You want to, a softer midsole is going to feel great on a trail. It's going to give you that cushioning. But as you get into slightly rockier terrain, it's going to feel a little bit squishy, right? You're not going to be able to feel the rock as well. Again, this is not a climbing shoe, but like you want to be able to kind of hybridize all of that into a shoe. So
totally, and you also want the ground control, and you want to be closer to the ground, even though we also have a bit of a stack here for comfort. And it's also just, consumers are demanding that, they don't want, otherwise you're in an approach shoe sector. So it's really this very diverted use that we allow ourselves here with this product.
Yeah, I like to think maybe it's like 80% on trail, but then when you get somewhere, you're like, well, let's go over there, right? And you kind of want to get off trail a bit, but you want to feel secure in that and building components that's gonna
or scramble to a peak, as long as it's not crazy. We don't, if it's a rope scenario or
you're not kicking steps,
that kind of stuff.
Or
but, just a bit. If it gets a bit wild, that shoe can definitely do it, and the grip's amazing as well.
designing that in, right? You're kind of thinking of that. We got this guy, we got the free hike, and that's great, right? And now we want to separate this. And so, what kind of components did you need to make sure were in this shoe? Like, I want to call it a line in the sand, right? This has got to be in this shoe for it to succeed.
Yeah. So as I said, like protection and control are the non-negotiables here because it's still a technical hiking shoe, correct? Um, the comfort one, the key USP for the free hiker is the comfort. Here, it's basically making sure the shoe is not uncomfortable. It's easy also for the store staff to sell through because we know the decision is made on the floor. And if the shoe doesn't feel right at the beginning because it has some pressure points, it's so hard nowadays to persuade consumers to say, yeah, it's going to break in because nobody wants to break in shoes anymore. It's not a leather boot that we, it's a different mindset now. So we really wanted to make sure the shoe feels good right out of the box, and what you see is what you get on the trail as well. So the line in the sand was stack heights for sure, because we wanted to make sure that it's clearly different to the free hiker. We wanted to make sure you're close to the ground. And then one other thing is the predecessor, the Swift R3. We had some issues on comfort, and maybe some of the audience know that we had to also update it in between the life cycle to make sure it's even more comfortable. But once the silhouette has a bit of a problem, it's hard. So we really wanted to make sure that we go back to the starting line and say, okay, this shoe was a bit overbuilt, and it also had, for example, collar heights where we know like they were too high, they were too stiff. Some of the package was just too stiff for that everyday use case. So we really wanted to make sure we understand the problems we had and address them. And that's why we went back to basically a season prior to the Swift R2 as a starting point, because that was a successful shoe for us. And you see some of that design language here as well with the triangles and everything. Also, the toe cap is exactly one-to-one the same that we had on the Swift. We went back to the old last, and we really started what should the update of the R2 should have looked like and felt like, and make it modern and contemporary, and really learn from mistakes that we've done in the past.
No, I mean, it's a really cool opportunity to be able to kind of, you had a branch, right? And it didn't quite work out. And there's so much to learn from when it doesn't quite work out, right? So that you can kind of go back and retool in this other branch with all these excellent learnings, right?
Easier briefs than briefing a product that's super successful right now and you don't want to mess it up.
Solid point, right? And so what's really cool is now you get to then bring in these technologies and bring in these thoughts. Okay, so comfort, we know we got to focus on comfort, right? So let's make sure we test into that. But also these other components that you're building off of, and then be able to bring in technology from the Adidas sort of larger scope, right? And even, as we'll see, some new technologies in this as well, which is pretty cool. Well, let's dive through kind of all of it. And this is one of my favorite parts is like you see a shoe, right? And I can read online and I can kind of look at it, flex it, and get some ideas maybe what it's all about. But we got you. And so what we got is somebody who can really give us kind of an elegant cruise through some of the features of this shoe. And let's begin with protection. I'm going to call out that you've integrated, of course, GORE-TEX EPE into this, which is our PFAS-free, our newest laminate sort of platform, and features recycled components, features PFAS-free membrane, which is thinner, right? So that's kind of goes without saying that would be in there, right? And that's going to give this the core benefits of waterproof, windproof, and breathability.
Totally, that was a non-brainer, obviously, right? Like we didn't want to launch something that we can't sell anymore, and also it's the right thing to do. So that was a no-brainer, obviously, putting in GORE-TEX EPE. Then we went back to a ripstop upper on the R3 that I mentioned before. We had a mesh, and some people didn't understand it's a waterproof shoe. And we know that the ripstop just gives it a bit of a more organically understood protection, specifically when it's about waterproofing. So on the GORE-TEX version, we went back to a ripstop upper. And then
we nerd out on that for just a second. Let's go a little deeper. When you're sort of looking at fabric choices in the upper, what are you considering, and what did you land on? Where did this upper come from? How did you source it, and you must have had thousands of fabrics you could choose from. Why this one did you land with?
Yeah, we have a toolbox, obviously, of things we can use. Always trying to find synergies with other models, because it's complexity is an issue with a brand of this size. So we have narrowed it down a bit. This is just a fabric that we've used historically on some other styles in the past. There's also a bit of an iconicity to it with the diamond shape. We know it worked in the past. We never had issues with it. And again, like we wanted to avoid more issues in the future. And then here, as I said, like it's a protective shoe. Obviously, this is a bit of a beefier material, so we wouldn't use it on a new modern lightweight trail runner. So here it just was absolutely fit for purpose. we did trial on different material at the first sample stage, and we went on a roadshow to show it around also in the US and met with key customers and get confirmation on our selection of this. This was by far the preferred option that we had. So we also do talk to accounts, store staff, and make sure that we make the right choices wherever we can. So sometimes we go into sample rounds with left, right. We just have different executions on left to right, or we have different executions between mid and low, and then we can see testing results, how it behaves, how durable it is, does it, has it have a tendency to crack or whatever, and that's the material we landed on.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. I mean, it's a unique looking fabric, and I'm always fascinated by whether you choose a knit or a weave, and then if you are going to use a weave, then how dense is the weave? Is it a ripstop? Is it a faux ripstop? This is a true ripstop. It really is an interesting material choice on the upper. It looks cool too. And then yeah, let's get into these molded toe caps and rubber wraps. First thing I noticed is actually a lot of these components are stitched together rather than glued on.
Yeah.
What was the thought process there?
It's again like a bit. We know that we sold the R2 more than the R3, and the R3 was a lot of it was welded on and foils, and we just recognized that the consumer who is looking for this durable shoe and wants to trust that shoe, there's some elements that just they are more durable. They have maybe had an experience of a delamination or a puncture, which is unavoidable with some of these materials, and for some use cases definitely superior. It adds weight, no doubt, but it also adds durability. And in this use case, it just made so much sense for us to add this, the synthetic pieces that are stitched on. But we do have, for example, the mud guard on the side that is not stitched on. That's molded, right? So it's a combination of those things, just to connect with the use case of the shoe. In general, all of the ingredients of the shoe are kind of pulled out, so they're visible. That's also why this key launch colorway is so nice, because you have the contrast of all those pieces. You see the cage right away, you see the overlays, you see the rubber wraps, you see the heel clip. So it's like an exoskeleton around some of them delicate pieces like the midsole, for example. And the toe cap, as I said, is one thing that we also didn't have on the last iteration, and we just felt it's so important because that's what a lot of people are looking for, is like this toe protection, especially in the diverted use of, I don't know, like a janitor using this as an everyday shoe. It's not just always hiking. Obviously, we're not creating for this, but we know people are using it for it. And then there's a lot of protection without having a proper like safety boot on it. It's still so much nicer to walk in these. And for some people, that's enough what they need.
Ben, can you pop to slide 11? Because this is going to have a blow apart, and this is really going to show this molded TPU toe cap, right? So this is actually pre-molded and put onto the shoe, creating that kind of bumper zone in the front. Yep. But it's also cool to see from this blow apart, right? The other sort of elements of protection that you've added into here. Let's kind of go here now, right? Talk to me a little bit about the interior and the midsole package. And what
totally, yeah. So I think the core piece here, and we also did trials with several different compounds, was really making sure that we have a different experience to what we used to have. Because when we go back to the R2, it's a very stiff shoe. Like it's a very traditional shoe that has seen that was created in a different time, and we didn't just want to carry the old one over. We wanted to make it better. So that was the starting point. But we said the midsole needs to be softer. It needs to be lighter. We need to make sure that this is contemporary, up to date with what we can deliver here. But obviously, a soft, low-density midsole is not as durable as a 60C EVA brick. That's just, there's some conflicting KPIs. So we had to make sure that we protect it. So the rubber wraps up. It wraps up here in the key zone where you touch the shoes and also where you may do some scrambling. And then we have the heel clip to moderate the whole thing. And also, as you saw on the page, there's also a torsion bar inside to really make sure that it flexes at the right area and also has some torsional stiffness here as well. So it's that unique feeling also you mentioned in the lead up here, that underfoot you feel the cushioning, it's softer, it's a more modern feel, but in all the areas from the outside, it's still a protective shoe that can work also in off-trail scenarios or whatever.
Yeah, so a lot in this, right? Which is really fast, interesting, which I would expect, right? Again, if you're selling this as this technical hiking shoe, we're going to expect there's going to be some internal components here to help really support the protection and the support of this shoe.
Yeah.
So let's kind of look at some of the other sort of components added into this. When I say the word control, I mean, and that was a word that you sort of shared with me about, an insight into this shoe. What do you mean by control? How can we express that to customers, that actual word?
So, I mean, what's key is like for us is obviously the partnership that we have with Continental, the supreme grip that we have. We feel like it's an absolute competitive grip to the marketplace. We really dialed up the lug profile here. Also make sure it's durable. You know, like it has a lot of surface if you're not using it on the trail. So we really have to fine tune that ground penetration, but also having enough surface so that it doesn't walk off right away. It's also a new compound that's a bit more durable than the ones we've used before without sacrificing grip. The other one is this heel step that I mentioned before, which we don't have on the free hiker, where we say it's forward motion, it's not less technical terrain. Whereas here we know like going downhill, it's a traditional hiking element, it's nothing innovative. But we said that's also very easy for us to differentiate the two, because when you go downhill and you have some gravel, it catches in this gap, and then you can really make sure to, have a controlled descent in non-maintained trails. The clip just helps, as I said, to moderate that softer foam, the midsole foam. It moderates it specifically when you walk with a backpack on. It just helps to like avoid the foam to like collapse to either side and really distribute the weight evenly and have a bit of a more torsional stability.
Right, so
And
you don't
then
get that falling off the platform. You're going to stay solid
totally,
on it, right? Because the softer foam, you could feel like when you lay on a softer bed and you're on the edge, you fall off, right? And so you need
yeah.
the guardrails there to keep you up.
Exactly. It's also in some shoes it's internally, but it just helps to understand also for the consumer, like, and it also goes all the way to the midfoot. So it's really like making sure that we moderate that softer midsole. And then we also chose to go back to a speed lace because also an iconic piece of the franchise history.
Yes.
And we just wanted to make sure that, we bring it back because it's what consumers recognize. And it gives it a technical look. That's one, but it really performs well. You don't have to open it. You don't have to relace. Some people just prefer this. However, we also made sure that we can use regular lace on the shoe. We don't have any gliders in that are super thin that only allow the speed lace. So that shouldn't be a reason not to buy the shoe, because you can pop it out and just use a regular lace here as well.
Yeah, let's get it. You have a cool little top-down animation, and the speed lace, like if you can see
Yeah,
from the R2, right? There is those little almost like a glide path, but you couldn't put a regular lace there. That's what you're talking about.
exactly. Yeah. So we spent a lot of time in the first factory trip actually to make sure that the speed lace isn't just a design gimmick or a technical look, but we really wanted to improve what we saw from a previous model here. Because you see when you pull on it, it just basically doesn't distribute all the way down the youth road. The tension gets stuck between the first two eyelets, and we really wanted to make sure you have a sucking
Right, the whole
sensation, like the
yeah.
whole cage actually hugs you into the heel cup. And yeah, we fiddled around, and then we ultimately landed on the less friction, the better. That's why we skip a lace point. Some people don't even recognize here where the lace bungee goes through. That is a lace point that's skipped. So the less friction, the easier it actually can pull you down. And we also took out the lice gliders because, jokingly enough, it had a better glide without the gliders. So we took them out, and it allows us now to pop in a regular lace, which is so important that we have options for the consumer, which are so easy. Like we don't give it away with the shoe because we feel it's a key reason to buy is for some people the speed lace. We don't want to create trash, but getting a regular lace and pop it into the shoe shouldn't be an issue for anyone.
If somebody really wants that, yeah. But I'm a fan of the speed lace. I love the ability to just cinch down quickly, get in and out of the shoe easily, right? You get getting out of the tent in the morning. I'm feeling a little creaky. It's just hard. I'm old, right? So it's hard for me to bend over and get all that together.
And sometimes when you are approaching the downhill, you want to crank it up a little bit more because you otherwise you slip forward a bit, or
Yes.
you're in the uphill or in a straight. You want to loosen it a bit, and it's just easier. But it is a polarizing piece. Some people just don't like it, and they like to have options. That's why we wanted to make sure that it's possible to use a regular lace.
And then we have a question here around how do you test and prove the durability? What kind of testing goes into the durability of the speed lace? Because I think maybe some of us have had experiences where the speed laces wear out. How are
Yeah.
you looking at durability here?
I mean, we have pulling tests and everything on the webbings, but we also the whole shoe gets tested quite a bit. So we have for every milestone we have a huge testing round. Wear testing. We send shoes out to consumers, to mountain guides in our case partially as well. And we see like some of them really go through the ringer there. Like there's professionals who use the shoe every day for like riverbed cleaning, which is way out of scenario. It's really tough on the shoes, and we have to also look at it with a bit of a grain of salt because some of them have the reputation of being shoe destroyers in the short amount
Sure,
of
but that's
time.
going to accelerate that process, right? So
Exactly, but you
where things
see
wear
what's
out.
going to happen
Yeah,
for a regular consumer maybe after year two.
yeah.
So we haven't seen any damages on the speed lace until then, which is a good sign. Yeah, no problem for us whatsoever so far. If it happens, that we'll find a solution, you know.
Absolutely right. And we're not on version 1.0 speed lace anymore, right? We're well down the line of having figured out, I think, a lot of durability
And
around
a
speed
lot of
lace.
brands are doing it. You know, it's
Yeah,
nothing crazy from our end. Like
yeah,
it's just, you know, options around the range that we just felt
right.
it's the right fit here because we know we've sold the speed lace version of the history of the shoe much better than the lace version because it just helps to differentiate the range. Some people mistake the regular lace version for a trail runner. Here it's clearly like this is the history of what we had as a Swift. Now the franchise of the Sky Chase
Yeah.
and one of the iconic pieces.
Um, and again, there's this innovation that's kind of innovations around the speed lace. I love that you kind of discovered that if we took out one of those pieces, we actually got more comfort and better lockdown, right? And those gifts
Yeah.
that we were just showing really show that. But there's other innovation that went into this shoe, and this is I want to highlight this and kind of hit this towards the end of the call. This is actually really very very cool. This is something that you have developed now. It's so new. I don't even know if it has a name yet. But describe the problem you were trying to solve here and
Yeah.
sort of how what your solution was.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been one of our probably longest members, more than 20 years. He's a pattern engineer and he internal. We just know that for some consumers, a Gore-Tex version of a shoe just creates issues. They would love that. Obviously, everybody likes the protection of it, but some people just struggle with these seams. And you see on the left picture here, the center seam that is a bit of a rough zigzag stitch sometimes, and also the horizontal line. So where the black lining ends and then the booty construction starts, those seams just for some people don't work. And that's why we said, let's cover them with a lining that goes all around the heel. That's a solution we know from Invisible Fit, right? I have a Invisible Fit shoe from our range, which is it's a laminate on the whole upper,
Yep.
and then you have a similar solution here in the heel. And Invisible Fit is great. It has some limitations, especially on a shoe like this,
Right.
where we have a lot of steps, a lot of like seams, cage, like it's a more of a beefier shoe. You can't really laminate it that nicely, or it takes a lot of taping. It's also a bit more expensive. So we said we try to bring this solution of what we know from the Invisible Fit into a booty construction. So basically cut open, it looks like this. This is the mid cut. We also have it on the mid cut. It's covering the heel, so you have none of this lateral the lateral seam that we, for example, had here.
Yep.
And also the center split in the heel is entirely covered. The other beauty of this solution is it allows us to place foam pockets for better heel fit, which wouldn't work under this membrane because the membrane doesn't have any stretch. So whenever you put a foam in here, it would go out of the shoe, but not inside of the shoe. And this really creates this nice lockdown here under your ankle bone. And this is just an additional nice way of like really increasing the comfort right away and making the consumers feel good when they step into it in the store. Like this has an amazing lockdown. We even had 5.5 women's testers trying the men's shoe and couldn't strip it off their feet. And yeah, we really believe this is a game changer for sale through, but also for the consumer, not just the sales issues. Really, it is a game changer for the experience. And we will also bring it into the version, the more accessible price point in fall winter, the AX. It'll also have it. It's a bit of an investment from our end, but we truly believe this is unique. We're also in the process of getting a patent for it. And yeah, I think this is something I really wanted to talk about today because it's a bit of an under the hood innovation that may not be visible from the outside, but I think this is such a strong argument for people who may be a bit hesitant to buy a Gore-Tex shoe that, you know, the people listening could then really pick up a shoe saying, hey, you don't have that issue here. It's a very different feeling.
It is really different, and that was my experience, right? I like those heel pods. I like to. It's not that I could feel them, but I could feel that my foot was very locked. My heel was very locked in there, even without having to cinch the laces super tight, right?
Yeah.
Generally speaking, around town, I don't have the laces that tight. I know I can lace them tighter when I'm on a long descent, but to have that heel security, and I noticed because the pods are an option with this, right? It adds this option of putting the pods in, and I'm a huge fan of those heel pods. I've seen that applied in other shoes strategically, but not very often. And I really like the way those feel. And I do think you can point them out to a customer because you can look inside there and feel them with your finger.
Yeah.
And point that out as something, hey, feel those heel pods. This is unique for a booty shoe. You're not going to get this in any other shoe in the market.
Exactly. And the other beauty is like the lining of a regular booty construction is a bit more slippery, you
Mhm.
know. So also this lining allows a bit of a more matte finish. So along by like surface, it's already more friction, and by that it's a bit of a better lockdown. So
And then,
yeah,
of course, this shoe is going to go through our style qualification, right? Ensuring that those materials are not high wicking materials. And
totally.
so we're going to
Yeah, yeah,
do a
yeah.
lot of testing to make sure that's not wicking water into the shoe next to your sock, right? And so whatever you've
Absolutely.
chosen passed the test, so therefore you've chosen correctly. Uh, yeah, how much are you thinking about that in material selection and like sort of knowing that they're going to go through the style qualification test at Gore?
I mean, I mean, let's face it, you know, putting Gore-Tex into a shoe does come with a bit of a price tag for us, also for the consumer. But these are the things that are just so valuable because it's not just slapping an ingredient brand into the product, but it's actually co-creating it. So Gore has people in the factory supporting us. They have people teaching the factory, licensing the factory, telling them how to use the machines, how to tape. Like there's manuals and manuals of processes, which is you don't get from other brands, you know. That's why it's so strong, and it's guaranteed to keep you dry. So it's such easy way for us to justify the price point because people don't have a lot of questions on Go in general. Like this is a non-questions asked ingredient brand that yeah, it comes with a lot of benefits also for the development part. So we have monthly meetings with Gore. We have, you
Yeah.
know, the testing, the rigorous testing, also in production later, not just in samples. So yeah, it's just it's an amazing support that is worth putting into the mid to higher price point shoes. Obviously, we have our own membranes for lower price points, entry price point shoes, and certain
Yeah.
applications. But from a certain price point onwards, we just know like Gore-Tex is a gold standard that
It's
they
that
can.
co-creation really, and that it's our perspective brought in again, along with your perspective, which is not nothing, and together it really does
Exactly.
create something. I think is better.
Especially when you innovate around it, you know, if it's
Yeah.
off-the-shelf solutions, I think it's still valid because it's still testing and the guarantees and everything. But especially when you start to like come up with something that pushes the envelope a bit, then that collaboration support was just amazing here, and it still is on future projects as well.
Um, I want to in sort of on the testing around this, right? The athlete testing and the way that you test these products. I think that you have access to a lot of testing facilities, a lot of athletes in your team. You know, what are you looking for in testing, and how do you think it's kind of your testing process might be slightly unique given the resources you have?
Yeah. So we have several different testing methods. Like one is just fit testing. So that's here, that's on campus, that's really just step in, walk around. There we can easily get answers within a day or two. We have internal employees that are not TERREX employees, but like I test for running, for example, because I'm sample size. So people who are not involved with the project, and it's a 5,500 people campus. So we have enough people here on the ground
Right.
that are capable of giving fit test feedback. We sent them out to wear testing. So that's what I mentioned before, the guys who wear them every day in the mountains, in several different terrains. And that is for 4 to 6 weeks. So overall, that was 6,000 hours for this project because we tested several options on the midsoles. We tested women's with the men's, which is also unique. That we open the because we have changes, you know, you see the molds, you see how the shoe behaves, and it's an investment because a mold is expensive.
Mhm.
So that's why there's a tendency in the industry to start with the men's and then take it down later. We said for this project, we really want to make sure it fits her as well, and we want to make sure to have the possibility to make choices for her early. So we opened both sizes and we tested both sizes in wear,
That's cool.
fit, and performance testing, which adds up a lot of more testers and then more hours. So it was the biggest TERREX testing effort ever
Wow.
because of the options too. You know,
Yeah.
we didn't want to test two midsole compounds on one shoe, like on one pair, because you could have a problem when one
Yeah.
is much softer than the other. So we had to have extra pairs with extra testers.
Oh my
So it
gosh.
led to like
So many samples and so much. Yeah.
60 testers on two milestones with like 6,000. One tester averages between milestone 100 or 200 hours of testing, which is a lot of hiking if you think about it from a
Yeah.
consumer perspective. So that's that. And then we have performance testing where we actually go out with the testing team to meet people and get qualitative input, not just looking at the durability of the shoe. Or, you know, we also get qualitative feedback from the wear testing, but really being out there in the scenario with the testers and being able to talk to them, comparing milestones with each other, comparing predecessors, comparing competition, and then really making sure that we dial it in and listen to them. and ideally going back to them for the next round as well. Like, hey, last time we did this. What do you think? Is it the right direction? That's our performance testing. Then we also go with the bigger facilities. We go on biomechanical testing, on the flexing, torsion, cushioning. So we get all those graphs and make sure that we are versus brief, what we wanted. And we seed it to our trail run athletes and also mountaineering athletes, which obviously don't use it for mountaineering because some of them have other brands for that, like a mountaineering traditional brand for the higher up. But they use it for the approach, and they gave us feedback, like small details, like the lace is too long. And then we figured out maybe we should educate the consumers that you can shorten the lace, because if our athletes don't understand that, maybe the consumers don't understand that. It's so easy, like just pop it out and shorten the knot. And then, so these are the little details, and they all love the grip specifically. The mountaineering guys, like at the beginning, they were a bit hesitant because it's a mass market hiking shoe, but they loved the grip and the comfort of it for out of scenario mountaineering, like going to the hut and then taking the bigger crampon ready shoes for the other stuff. So it's
a lot of testing. I mean, I think that's really, for me, the most testing of any sort of Adidas TERREX shoe ever. And from the components of fit, from wear, from protection, from performance, right? You're looking at all angles to ensure that these products really are going to work, right? And along with the code, the testing that goes on with Gore as well, right? That's just a lot of proving that this shoe is going to be great for that technical hiker out there in the mountains.
And there's even more. There's color bleeding testing from the factory on each colorway. There's material testing leading up to being even in the toolbox, even, like Martindale tests and that kind of stuff. So
yeah, of course, right?
Yeah, but we had to make sure, like specifically with this iteration of the shoe, that we leave no stone unturned and make sure that we win back consumers and customers from our end. Because, as I said, the R3 wasn't the most successful shoe for us, and we really had to make sure that we address what we saw, and that's why we spend a bit more on testing this time.
Well, Tom, I mean, I've learned a lot about this rig, right? I mean, it's amazing. You look at this, and it's a shoe, but there's so much more, right? As we've talked about the blow parts, we've looked at the protection, even the considerations with the speed lace, looking specifically at some of the components in these shoes, the heel pods for lockdown, right? There's a lot going on in this, and I just want to say, like, thank you. Like, this is a really, really cool shoe to bring to market. To add as an offering for folks who are looking in that more technical hike space, right? We see a lot of shoes going towards the softer right now. To be able to add something into that technical hike space that's not a full leather shoe, right? Something that's more of a textile option is pretty cool. And all of the thoughts and considerations that you have and your team have put into this, really, it shines and it shows. And so thank you.
No, it's also awesome for me to be able to talk about this in detail, because sometimes we're getting cut of like, tell us 3 things. No, I don't want to just tell you 3 things. I want to geek out on it. So thanks.
Right, that's what I love about this network is we can spend 45 minutes together geeking out on one shoe. And we have folks who are watching with us who are willing to go along with the ride with that, which is amazing, right? And that's kind of a fun thing that we can do together. So thank you for your time and being able to dive deep into this shoe. It's been a lot of fun. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.